The border battle, or more specifically the fight over the federal government's intentional refusal to not only protect our border, but remove the illegal aliens that have swarmed into the country by the millions, is continuing to ramp up. The Biden administration, you see, continues its war against the states who try and remove the illegals from their territory. The Biden admin has threatened legal action against the state of Iowa following the enactment of a new law that allows state authorities to arrest illegal aliens who have previously been denied entry or deported from the United States. This law, signed by Governor Kim Reynolds, is set to take effect on July 1st and makes it an aggravated misdemeanor offense for criminal aliens to be in the state if they have outstanding deportation orders, or were previously deported, or were once barred from entering the U.S. The Justice Department, in a letter to Governor Reynolds, declared that the measure was unconstitutional, arguing that it creates a separate state immigration scheme and intrudes into a field occupied by the federal government. Which, by the way, is the same excuse that they have used to try and thwart Texas from defending their borders from invasion as well. Essentially, what's happening here is the feds have abandoned their duty to defend this country and are actively fighting anyone who opposes them. And in this case, the federal government has now set a deadline for Iowa to suspend enforcement of their law, threatening to sue the state otherwise. Governor Reynolds and Iowa's Attorney General Brenna Byrd have indicated that they do not care what the federal government says about this. They are going to defy the government, essentially telling the Biden administration to go pound sand, arguing that the law is necessary due to the federal government's failure to enforce existing immigration laws. As the Iowa Capitol Dispatch reported, they said that the law is set to go into effect July 1st. However, the federal Justice Department plans to stop the law from being enforced before that date. In the letter, Boynton gave Reynolds and Byrd a deadline of Tuesday to suspend enforcement of the law, or the Department of Justice will take action. As Boynton wrote, if you have not confirmed by May 7th, 2024 that Iowa will forbear such enforcement, the United States intends to pursue all appropriate legal remedies to ensure that Iowa does not interfere with the functions of the federal government. He went on to say that the Iowa law is preempted by federal law and violates the United States Constitution, and that the measure is contrary to the federal government's goal of processing undocumented immigrants in the U.S. in a way that is consistent with the Immigration and Nationality Act. He wrote that the state measure conflicts with federal immigration law in several ways, including various provisions of federal law permitting non-citizens to seek protection from removal to avoid persecution or torture. Boynton said the Iowa law effectively creates a separate state immigration scheme by imposing state criminal penalties for violating the federal prohibition on unlawful entry into the United States, and is intruding on the federal government's oversight of immigration law and enforcement. Anyway, the article went on to write that Reynolds and Byrd, however, argued that the law is necessary because President Joe Biden and his administration are not enforcing current immigration laws. No duh. Reynolds wrote that the only reason we had to pass this law is because the Biden administration refused to enforce the laws already on the books. I have a duty to protect the citizens of Iowa. Unlike the federal government, we will respect the rule of law and enforce it. Now, Byrd also wrote about this, criticizing the Biden administration in a post on social media about the lawsuit, saying that Iowa will not back down. And wrote in his Twitter X post that not only has Biden refused to enforce federal immigration laws and secure our border, he is now threatening to block states like Iowa from enforcing our own laws. Our message to Biden is this: Iowa will not back down and stand by our state's safety hangs in the balance. If Biden refuses to stop the border invasion and keep our communities safe, Iowa will do the job for him. Now, the conflict between the federal government and states like Iowa and Texas is highlighting this intentional dereliction of duty that the U.S. federal government has been engaged in. As we've discussed before on this channel, this is not a new issue, only it is ramping up now at incredible rates. For example, in the last couple of years, we've seen nearly 5 million illegal aliens crossing the border. They are swarming into this country. Right now, where there's an estimated northward, so above 22 million illegal aliens in this country. This is a huge problem. Historically, by the way, there has always been a fight between the power balance of the national government and the states. This has always been a source of tension. The Constitution has stated that federal statutes take precedence, and traditionally, when federal and state laws clash, federal law prevails. However, the Constitution only grants specific powers to the federal government, with the rest reserved for the states, leading to overlapping powers in practice. This ambiguity, combined with the increasing nationalization of politics, has led parties to use control of states to resist presidents of the opposing party. However, underlining all of this back and forth over the past few decades has been this concerted effort from radical leftists and Rhino Republicans in bringing millions of illegal aliens with the purpose of granting them amnesty. There have been, in fact, over half a dozen attempts to grant these criminal aliens citizenship over the past 20 years in this country, with the most recent attempt in 2021. Now you might be asking, well, why? And why are they so hell-bent on this? Well, the reason why it matters so much is that, as we've seen in California, where amnesty was granted in the United States back in 1986, there were roughly about 3 million illegal aliens. Half of them lived in California. Now, that state, which had voted Republican in every national election from 1972 to 1988, suddenly flipped deep, deep blue. You see, those who come to this country illegally typically need government assistance. That's why they didn't go through the regular channels. And those that need government assistance to live, well, they tend to vote for the party that gives them the most stuff, which just so happens to be the Democratic Party. And you really can't necessarily blame these people either. Wanting to survive is a powerful motivator. You're voting for your own interests, at least short term, even if long-term welfare is a poison to those who become hooked on it. We've seen what welfare has done to generations of children, dooming them to endless poverty, which only brings more votes for the Democratic Party. And as for California, well, the state was radically altered from a purple state, similar to Texas, to a deep, radical left state with almost no hope of ever seeing Republicans remaining a viable contender. It's essentially a single-party state now. This has left the state of California with no checks and balances, allowing for the almost total corruption of government across the board. The modern radicals who run the Democratic Party in California have created an ever-increasingly darker and more Orwellian state there, with tendrils of control and power over the population reaching into ever deeper and darker crevices. This is why the border battle has never been resolved, my friends. It is an endgame move to shift the country to a one-party system. If amnesty were granted today, especially considering how many illegal aliens now reside in swing states, there would be a generational shift in power. Total control on a national scale would shift to the Democratic Party. And I don't think it would stop there either. The border wouldn't be closed after another bout of amnesty. Why not? If you leave it open, in another 10, 20 years, you could easily have another 10, 20 million illegal aliens just waiting to go. And with a new fresh crop of voters ready to crush the will of regular citizens under the boot of an ever more powerful single-party rule, I mean, it's endgame. Really, it's ingenious. What better way to transform the country than simply add enough new voters who don't have any loyalty to the current way that the country's run to just simply override the old citizens who don't share your vision for the future? Which is why this is such a big deal. Now, the fight, of course, is far from over. The Supreme Court, for example, has allowed Texas to enforce its immigration law, which allowed that state to arrest illegal aliens, and the Biden administration had tried to sue to block it as well, arguing that it tramples on the federal government's exclusive authority to oversee immigration. That decision, by the way, is part of at least 3 ongoing legal disputes between Texas and the United States over immigration enforcement on the U.S.-Mexico border. To be frank, out of all of the battles we are witnessing in this country today, the fight over illegal immigration will most likely be the defining moment for whatever future that this country is going to have. Whichever side wins this fight may very well control the destiny of what this country becomes in the future. And that, at the very least, is worth watching with great interest. From the To Be Frank show, my friends, I'm Adrian. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.